Ladies and gentlemen of the media and dignitaries here, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness will be here shortly. May I welcome the Minister of Education and Information, Royal Reid, the Honourable Royal Reid, the Honourable Mike Henry, the Honourable Darrell Vaz, and the Honourable Carl Samuda, who are joining us, as well as the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security. Today with us for the press briefing we'll have the Prime Minister along with the Commissioner of Police, George Quaylo, and the Chief of Defence Staff, Major General Rocky Meade. May I ask members of the media to clear the passage, please, the main passage. The side aisles should also be clear. May I ask you to take your seats, turn your phone on the off, silent, or vibrate position. He's coming with them. And for those who are going live, you may begin going live now. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand. The Most Honourable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, along with the Minister of Justice, the Honourable Delroy Chuck, the Minister of National Security, the Honourable Robert Montague, the Chief of Defence Staff, Major General Rocky Meade, and the Commissioner of Police, George Quaylo. Please be seated. We'll begin with a statement from the Prime Minister.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we are all aware and agree, crime and violence, in particular murders, have been escalating in the parish of St. James. I have been advised by the security forces in writing that the level of criminal activity experienced, continued, and threatened is of such a nature and so extensive in scale as to endanger public safety. In consideration of this, I wrote to the Governor General recommending the declaration of a state of public emergency for the parish of St. James. The Governor General has signed a proclamation dated and effective 18th of January 2018. The proclamation has been gazetted. A state of public emergency is now in effect for the parish of St. James. Under state of public emergency, the security forces will have extraordinary powers, and some rights are suspended. This does not mean that the use of these extraordinary powers can be arbitrary or are beyond review. The declaration of a state of public emergency does not mean the suspension of the rule of law. The security forces are expected and have been directed to treat citizens with respect and to protect the dignity and safety of all. Clearly, the operations which will be conducted, though directed at criminals and their facilitators, and I want to repeat that, the facilitators of criminals, will create some level of general discomfort. We ask the public to cooperate with the security forces. Now is the time. If you know where the guns are, please tell us. If you know where the criminals are, please tell us. The Reward for Guns program is still in effect. The number to call is Crime Stop 311, or call the Security Forces hotline 830-8888. As has always been the stance of the government, we will continue with a credible process of communicating with the public. We ask the press and the public to be understanding of the sensitivities of this matter. Again, a state of public emergency is in effect for the parish of St. James.
Minister of Justice, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, will now explain.
The Constitution provides that a period of public emergency can be declared by a proclamation if the Governor General is satisfied that action has been taken or is immediately threatened by any person or body of persons of such a nature and on so extensive a scale as to be likely to endanger the public safety. The Emergency Powers Act refers to the existence of a state of public emergency and empowers the Governor General to make regulations during a period of public emergency. The proclamation by the Governor General declaring that a state of emergency exists and regulations made under the Emergency Powers Act have now been gazetted. This means extraordinary powers have been given to the security forces to search, curtail operating hours of business, access to places, and for the detention of persons without warrant. These actions will not be done randomly. Effective communication will occur by order and in accordance with the emergency powers regulations. Resort to a declaration of a state of emergency is the ultimate tool that the government can utilize to restore peace and reclaim public order and public security in a community. Again, this does not mean, as the Prime Minister has pointed out, that the upholding and respect for human rights have been abandoned. In fact, they will be preserved and protected. Further, there will be an emergency, under the Emergency Review Tribunal, appeals can be made in accordance with the regulations. Ladies and gentlemen, the almost daily occurrences that demonstrate the breakdown of law and order in St. James are well known. The data show that the parish of St. James has historically and comparatively recorded the highest number of murders for a parish in the history of the nation. In fact, the parish that has the second highest number of murders recorded, just about half the number of murders that were recorded in St. James. In other words, the number of murders in St. James is twice as high as the parish that has the second highest number of murders in Jamaica. The government felt it justified and necessary to resort to the use of the power to declare a period of public emergency. The Emergency Powers Regulations 2018 will be tabled in Parliament at the next sitting in accordance with the Emergency Powers Act.
Minister Robert Montague.
My appeal is to the citizens of St. James. Because of the state of emergency, a number of their usual activities will be curtailed. We seek the full cooperation of the good citizens of St. James. These operations that will be carried out by the security forces will be targeted at the criminal elements and their facilitators. We will be relentless as we pursue the criminals and their facilitators. We therefore seek the patience and understanding of all the good citizens of St. James. As you travel, you will encounter roadblocks and operations. We ask that you give the police and the soldiers your full cooperation. Although there will be instances where some activities will be curtailed, as much as possible, we do not intend to stop the good citizens from doing what they are supposed to be doing in their normal scope of things. However, we are appealing to the citizens of St. James for any information that you may have. Now is the time to tell us who the gunmen are and the gangsters, because a gunman or a gangster in your community is a danger not only to your community, but is a danger to you. Therefore, any information you have, all information you have, we need it. We need your full cooperation in moving forward, in restoring peace and order, so that the good people can continue to contribute to the well-being of Jamaica.
Commissioner of Police George Coelho.
To date, the parish of St. James has presented a major challenge to police operations. Last year, there were 335 murders in the parish. This is almost twice that of any other parish, with Clarendon having 168 murders over the same period. There are numerous gangs operating in St. James. These gangs are involved in murders, shootings, scamming, extortion, and other illicit activities. They use murder as a tool to further their criminal interests, protect turf, and to incite fear. They create an atmosphere of insecurity throughout St. James and surrounding areas. There have been many incidents where criminals use high-powered weapons to carry out killings and reprisal against other gangs in several areas of St. James. Innocent civilians have been victims of crossfire and reprisals. The key operational objectives of the security forces are to disrupt the activities of these gangs, regularize the security environment, and ensure the restoration of peace and the rule of law. One of the primary objectives is also the protection of the rights of citizens, and all personnel have been briefed on this. We'll be going after wanted men, seizing weapons, and taking back our communities. We want to assure the public and residents of St. James that the security forces are there for your protection. We will ensure that the rights of all citizens are protected. We have set up an hotline for citizens of St. James to register any concerns that they may have and to get information about the activities of the security forces. The number is 830-8888. This number can also be used to confidentially give information to the security forces on wanted criminals and weapons. There is also a reward being offered for guns and wanted men, and citizens are reminded to call Crime Stop at 311.
Chief of Defense Staff, Major General Rocky Meade.
In support of the state of emergency, I have requested the call out of the Jamaica National Reserves and I have, since dawn this morning, deployed additional troops to St. James. You have already been told of the circumstances that warrant the state of emergency. What you can expect is that all persons using all roads leading in and out of St. James may be subject to search, vehicle search and personal search. In various areas of the city and townships, you will see joint patrols, static and mobile. The troops will be pursuing wanted persons, violence producers, and may therefore require the cooperation of the citizens of the parish. You already heard the number being given out, 830-8888. That number is in fact going to be manned by the Jamaica Defense Force, and we look forward to your information. So what can you expect? You may be stopped at various checkpoints. You may be asked for information to verify your identity. You may be asked to declare whether you have any offensive weapons or anything else to declare. And then you may be asked to facilitate a search of your vehicle and yourselves. We ask that you cooperate with the troops. The troops have been refreshed in their training of human rights and how to engage with citizens. And all citizens of Jamaica, including the violence producers, can feel safe in the hands of the military as long as you are not threatening the troops. We are ensuring that we enforce the rule of law, that we disrupt gang activities, and the particular focus are on those that are responsible for murders, lot of scamming, trafficking of arms and drugs, and extortion. I already indicated that persons may be detained. There's a process to be followed if persons are detained, and you can get details later should you need. We have, we're asking for your help, as already been indicated. We're also going to indicate within this forum that we welcome the scrutiny of the public. If there are any members of the public who would like to report any information or any perceived mistreatment, we welcome the report. And to facilitate that, we welcome the media in the operational area of St. James. We ask, of course, as usual, that if you let us know then that you are going to be entering the space, we can inform you and assist you with your security. But there are no restrictions on the media accessing the space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Major General Rocky Meade, Chief of Defense Staff. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the media, your questions. Please raise your hand once I see you, and please note that I have to see you. I'm right over to your right. Once I see you, I'll indicate that you should identify yourself. A mic will come to you. Ask your question briefly, and the response will be given. May I note to you that given the extent of things happening now, we'll have a limited amount of time for question and answer. Natalie Campbell from IRI FM. Yes.
Good afternoon, sirs. Why did it take so long for this kind of action for St. James?
Although you didn't ask specifically, but I know you really intended to ask me that question. The government has been contemplating this action for some time. This is not an action that can be taken in an arbitrary way. It requires a great deal of planning, and it is not just an action for show. It is an action where we have to plan out both the opening and the ending game. And that kind of planning takes time. But more importantly, it takes resources to be behind it. And I believe that we are now at the point where the actions are now aligned with resources. But there's one other important alignment. The government cannot act without public support. And as the person in charge of the government, and given the context in which we're calling this state of emergency, having gone through one in 2010, we must always be considerate of what happened before. We must make sure that we learn from the errors, and that this is not something that, I repeat the word, arbitrary. It is not done in an arbitrary way. This is an instrumental, well-planned-out action. And yes, it took some time. Some persons may have felt it should have happened long ago. But I'm now of the view that this has happened when we have an alignment of all the variables to make this operation successful.
From that side, Mr. Denny. I'm sorry, the microphone will come to you.
Thank you very much. Hope Connor Denny, Senior International Correspondent, Vision Newspaper Canada. Mr. Prime Minister, I heard you talk about a public emergency. And I hear there's talk about a limited state of emergency. And I hear about emergency powers from the Commissioner of Police, which it is. Secondly, I hear about a gazette, this operation being gazetted. Can we see that at that publication?
We have copies for it.
Thank you very much. All right. Thirdly,
Three in one, Mr. Denny. Right. So I think we can limit it to two. We have a very limited amount of time. So, Mr. Prime Minister, if you could answer those two for me.
Well, I'm hearing all kinds of terms being used, but we have deliberately stuck to what is in the law. And we have declared a state of public emergency. I know of nothing else. I hear all kinds of other terms being added on. One such term is limited. We have not declared a limited state of emergency. The parish of St. James is now effectively under a state of public emergency.
All right, from this side now, I recognize the hand of Ms. Chisholm, who had hers sticking up real quickly.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Two questions, two in the first round. Yes, I know Major General Rocky Mead mentioned that the JDF reserves has been called out, but how will the security forces be able to police two zones of special operations, the state of emergency in St. James, as well as the rest of the country? And what is happening with Clarendon? You mentioned the stats about 168. What type of intervention will be carried out there?
Thank you.
A very good question, but I will answer you in this way. We did not take this action arbitrarily and without consideration. So it is planned. And as I said, there is an alignment of the plan, the resources, and public support. And having all those three critical variables in place, we have acted. The resource is not just the monetary resource or the motor vehicles or the warlike provisions or the intelligence. The real critical resource is to have the troops and the forces on the ground, and therefore we have taken that action. There are some questions that will be asked here which we will not answer. Not that we don't have the answer, but we will not answer it because we do not want to disclose our strategic intent.
From that side of the room, Nika Lewis.
All right, thank you. Okay, good afternoon. I am wondering how long will the state of emergency be in effect for? And also if anyone has tried the number that's being told that we should call. It doesn't seem to be working.
Again, we will not declare to the public for strategic reasons the duration of the state of emergency. As regards the number, I'm certain that the security forces will respond to you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. I believe we are out of time. Thank you so much to all members of the media for coming. You have the time for one more, sir?
Well, I wouldn't want the press to say we avoided questions, so...
All right. Well, let's take two more then. One from this side and one from that side. I know so many hands went up, so we have just this one and one last one. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Prime Minister.
Could you identify yourself?
My name is Garnet Roper.
From which press?
Probe from many things. Probe. I will answer probe. Did you contemplate this public emergency at the time of Zoso last year? I'm curious because a lot of people have died. And I'm wondering what, to your mind, is the Rubicon that has been crossed at this time. I hear you talk about the alignment of forces, and I'm asking a second subsidiary question. Can the police, given its lack of mobility, really, be of any significant impact at this time, given the fact that that has not changed? And then lastly, I gather from those who know, it's the same question, that the signal has been sent that this was going to happen, and there has been substantial movement already out of the parish by a violence producer. How do we know that this will be more effective than the ZOSO, rather than just a public relations gesture?
Thanks, Mr. Roper.
Very good questions, Reverend Roper. Just going from recollection, as I said, we have been contemplating this measure. We have put together a comprehensive crime plan. There is some amount of panic, I would say, in the country where people would want the government to almost react immediately from a knee-jerk perspective. All that we are doing is very deliberate and very strategic. We recognize that this problem, which has been created for the last 30 years, where we have seen a geometric increase in crime, particularly in murders, and you really can't say that any of the interventions, other than the last state of emergency, has resulted in any significant reduction. What we have learned from the last state of emergency is that you cannot be forced into it. You have to plan it. Because the moment that you use it as a reactionary tool, that's when you will make terrible mistakes. As you can see from the zones of special operation, regardless of what the superficial criticisms may be, we were very deliberate and very strategic. Importantly so, to give the public the level of assurance that the government can use force without violence. The objectives of the zone were to reduce murders, restore public order, and build public confidence. On all three counts, the zones have been very successful. There is a notion abroad in the public that the only way to fight crime is that we have to go out there and kill people. It is not my intention to do so. We fight crime by enforcing the law, and we can only enforce the law by using force in a lawful way. And you would have seen that we have taken a great deal of time to ensure that the use of these extraordinary powers are within the law. So even this exercise is a demonstration that the Jamaican state can use and can be trusted with extraordinary powers in the protection and defense of the innocent citizens, and as the Chief of Defense Staff says, even the criminal.
Mr. Sharp, you're supposed to wait until you're identified. That
I'm
is
sorry.
But seeing that he has broken the law.
I'm sorry.
And you're a
yes.
DC.
So the final question. There were 3 hands that went up at once, and I know the Prime Minister has said he'll just take one final. So we'll give it to the woman who is carrying.
Well, the tourism concern. We have, again, put that in the equation of consideration. And let me several stakeholders, including stakeholders in the tourism industry, have written to me to say that they are of the opinion and would support the necessary actions to bring the parish of St. James under control and restore public safety. And I think that should answer the question. I think all members of the tourism fraternity would be prepared and can be assured that our security forces will act in a way that will be a credit to the destination. I think that the present state of global security would have a sense of awareness in travelers to be even expecting of greater security presence.
And finally, Kalila Reynolds from Nationwide. I'm sorry, could you just say it a little louder for us, Kalila? Yes, go ahead. All right, so there are two questions, one on numbers.
Just to say, the questions that you have asked are good questions. The one that you have asked of me, I will not answer for strategic purposes.
Major General?
The powers that we have allow us to search. I have encouraged my troops that out of respect for our citizens, they are to be polite. So I do expect them to ask, and it's the same way you would ask anyone. You know, I ask my secretary or my driver to do something, and I say please, but they know they have to do it, but it's a matter of being polite. So the powers allow us to search, and you cannot refuse a request, but nonetheless, the instructions I've given is for polite interaction with the citizens of Jamaica. And that's the reason I articulated it in that way.
Thank you so much, CDS. Thank you so much, Prime Minister and ministers, along with the Commissioner of Police. The gazetted form declaration has been distributed to everybody. Thank you so much for coming, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, please remember that the Jamaica House Fellows will also have a public forum here starting in another 10 minutes on the economy. It will be a very interesting discussion. May I invite you to remain behind for that as well.